I just finished doing my pick a card tarot reading for the evening, and I thought I'd smoke a bowl. And why I did, I thought I'd talk to you guys about another supernatural topic, right? Let me go ahead and get rid of that so we can just be there. I believe that Aleister Crowley was probably onto something, and if you disagree, please comment down below. When he said, there's psychedelic magic, right? That's the only real magic. Is well, it's not the only real magic. Magic is okay. So there's lots of different kinds of magic, but the first core element of magic is you have to open up your third eye and believe that you can do it. Some people can do this. Some people, and third eye is appropriate. We'll talk about that in just a second. Some people can do this just through meditation and stuff like that. Monks, and they're like awesome, and they spend years doing that and stuff like that. And just like some people are really natural bodybuilders, and they take years to develop that basic frame and stuff like that. But you can also just take steroids or mushrooms, and that's what I said. You can open your consciousness through chemicals, and people have been doing that forever. And as a path to avoid the intense, rigorous meditation that I think, like, I'm pretty sure there are monks and certain indigenous shamans and such that can enter transinitial states just by willing themselves, right? Like but most of us are taking some kind of sustenance that's going to open our third eye up, and it's going to allow us to perceive different dimensions, different patterns, and in that perception, you can really start to really see like the more true magical essence of the world, and that this is probably just a big illusion or a dream or something, right? And because we know that, we can shape the dream, right? If we're in the dream and we know it's a dream, even if we're just a dream, well, we know it's a dream and a dream, so we can do what we want in that dream. And that's where magic starts to happen, right? So, and I don't quite know how all the ifs and ands and all that kind of good stuff with it, but you start to use psychedelics to open your third eye. And the reason I'm talking about third eye is eventually when you go deep enough into psychedelics, you'll find that reality's like an onion. I like Shrek. Reality is like a parfait. Let's not use an onion. It's a parfait. It's got layers. Reality is like a parfait, right? I'm sorry, it's a stupid, obscure reference, but there's layers to it. And you take, you're just walking around day-to-day reality, and you go to work and you go to sleep and you have a drink or you smoke a joint or whatever, and your consciousness kind of vibrates at just a certain level, right? But then you have an elevated psychedelic experience. And at a low level, like I like to call the glow, is reality changes a little bit. Now you can see things glow, right? And if you've ever seen, like, if you've never taken psychedelics before and you've just understood what the government's told you about it, or your mom or your pastor, you don't think you're Jesus or you can fly or anything like that. You're in a perfect state of mind when you're at psychedelics. It's your perceptions that change. If you don't think you would normally think that you were Jesus or that you could fly, you're not going to think you could fly or that you were Jesus. You might talk to Jesus or a being that you might think is, but they're not going to, it doesn't work that way. That's propaganda. And we'll talk about that because I've never seen like I've never personally talked to Jesus on psychedelics, but we'll get there. But I've heard people who have, and I don't discount their experiences because, again, if you take psychedelics, you'll understand that there's some of these underlying experiences that everybody seems to have. But then there's subjective experiences because we're all our own people, right? So when your third eye is open and then you can start to see things, and I want to touch on Crowley again, is because, okay, so at like a low level of psychedelics, you'll get this glow, right? Like, I like call it the force or whatever. You'll just find this glow that exists in everything. And you'll realize all of a sudden, a lot of people do, is like, oh, wow, the TV and science and all those motherfuckers have just been bullshitting us. We're just energy and vibration and happiness and spirit and harmony. Like, we're not alone or disconnected. We never have been. We just have told that so much that we started to believe it, that religion became about giving people money versus showing them the spirit world, that we've forgotten that even on the day that you're the most sad or down, there's this glow that just is the living essence of Earth. I know that sounds hippie, and I don't know the best way to put it. And if you've had psychedelic experience, comment below. You know exactly what I'm talking about. this glow, this inner light that radiates. So that's one level of the psychedelic experience, and we're getting to the whole point of this conversation. Then the second level of the psychedelic experience is in things that get a little bit like dimensions, like oddities and angles and sizes and stuff, right? Things get a little bit liquid. Reality starts to melt, the lights start to change, right? At this level, I've noticed personally that different lights seem to have different vibrations and different entities that live in them. And again, if you're not taking psychedelics, you won't understand this. And I'm not, there's no way you can. This would be like a woman trying to explain to a man what it feels like to have birth. You can't. It's a completely different experience than what you would. In fact, I often tell people, just as a side note, at 46 years old, at the time of this recording, what I've learned in life is that everyone should have a sexual experience. Everyone should have a child. And everyone should have a psychedelic experience if they can, because all of these experiences, and everybody should probably fast too. All of these experiences, like for at least 2 or 3 days, so you really know what it's like to be hungry and eat food when you are, will have a profound impact on your psyche and change you as a person, especially psychedelics. And this is the reason why cultures have been doing psychedelics for thousands of years before the church and Western civilization came along, kind of shut that down for reasons we can talk about in another video. But let's get back to this one. So at the 5 to 15 gram area, you're gonna really encounter, like, you're gonna see the beings that live in the light. And where I really got to Crowley was he talks about in the Book of the Law about he encounters the Egyptian goddess. Am I saying that right? The goddess is always the goddess. It doesn't matter if you call her Freya. It doesn't matter if you call her Inanna. I always say the name. Apologize. Astarte. It's the same energy. It's the same goddess, right? And I've taken enough psychedelics that I've met the goddess, right? And it's the most in you'll be, and you'll know that just like you'll never quite have that relationship, right? And Crowley kind of touches about this, and I was like, whoa, he gets it, right? And in the sun, it has its own energy too. And he messed around with psychedelics. And I happen to live in the desert myself. So I don't know, maybe there's something to that there's, because there's Egypt when Esau did all that Book of the Law stuff. So there's that level, right, where you can start to see, like, see is not the right word, but sense gods and entities. And I don't know if gods is the right word, but entities definitely is. And then but there you go deeper than that. And as deep as I've gone is I've done 25 grams of mushroom. And at that point, reality falls apart. And that's the point of my conversation about the I today. And one thing about my 25 gram trip, and I can talk to you about it depth at another day, is that I managed to keep it together while I was tripping. I always remembered who I was. I did not experience ego death. And it's terrifying because I kind of wish I would have, because I remember, and the thing I remember most about the 25 grams is a couple of things. One is that, like, I almost saw the world like Neo, right? Just patterns made up of endless day glow mycelium and eyes. If you've had, you know what I'm talking about. If you've been on a high dose of DMT or some mushrooms, and neon cascading colors of endless, 2001 fucking Space Odyssey. It's full of stars, just right, the infinite. And time loses all meaning and stuff. But what I confronted is, I like to call it, and again, comment below if you, is the I. And this is where, like, there's an eye on the back of the dollar bill. There's an eye of Ra, Odin's eye. So many eye metaphors. You will come to contact with this eye, which, in my opinion, I don't know how you close your eyes. It's just there, right? It's like the eye of Sauron almost, right? You're like Frodo with the invisible ring on, and you've got this eye of energy, right? And it will blast you with this white light, right? This white, like deadlights almost, right, from it, right? It's just like that light in Hellraiser 2. It hits you, and it just like wants to burn your consciousness out, right? This is what my experience on this trip. This was the most intense trip I've ever had. And again, I don't advocate any of these things. Don't go breaking the law and taking a bunch of mushrooms and stuff like that. I felt at a point in my life I needed to take mushrooms, and I'm happy that I did. But I don't advocate doing things you can hurt yourself. You got to know what you're doing, and you want to make sure you're not breaking any laws. Mushrooms are illegal in a lot of places. Just want to throw that out as a disclaimer. But for myself, when I went that deep in, I saw this eye, and most people experience ego death. They kind of lose themselves, and they're just not there anymore when they're on the trip. Never. I managed to keep my reality, and when I saw this eye, I mean, it wanted to punish me for it, like it was trying, and I just kind of kept thinking about other stuff. It's like, I could do a trip report on this that would be like an hour if anybody's interested. It was a very cool experience. Um, but what I got most out of it, and I've wanted to go back, and I haven't done 25 grams again, and this was a couple of years ago, but I've thought about doing it because it was such an intense experience. I remember, just as a side note, my friend had called me like 5 or 6 hours after the initial trip, and I had came back like to reality, as I'd like to call it, and he was like, "Are you doing all right?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, my kitchen's melting." Because it was like the whole thing was vibrating and like liquefied stuff, because it was like the most intense acid trip of your life. But at least I was on planet Earth still again, right? I wasn't in this like fractal dimension staring at this multidimensional eye, which I wish my partner at the time could have recorded it, because you would have just seen me with like this expression on my bed as I'm clenching it. Nothing's happening, right? Because you see in the seventh dimension or whatever. But that eye doesn't like that you see it, right? And it tries to kind of burn that away from you. And the whole reason my talk is, what is that eye? Do the elite know something about that eye? And I don't know what the elite means, like the people who put the eye on the back of the dollar bill, or the people who put all the occultism in the government buildings and stuff like that. The eye of providence, whatever the hell you want to call it, is a thing. And I thought to myself of, like our Norse mythos and or belief, I like to think the Norse gods were real, but they're probably just that anyway. But the metaphor for it is Odin. Let's think about Odin. Odin's awesome. Odin rips out his own eye, right? I often think that since that trip, was Odin like ripping that eye out? Or was Odin someone who confronted the eye, that barrier, that guardian from this reality to the next one? And rather than shrink from it, he Quizak cataract that motherfucker, dude reference, and just punched right through it. Just said no. And that's when the ruins and magic and all that kind of stuff was revealed. And I wonder if there's something to that, to the shamanic journey. And if I ever manage to do the will and find myself in a place where it's appropriate to do mushrooms, um, I'd like to try, which is probably stupid and I won't be able to. But again, I've had this really strong eye experience. And I think about that often. What's behind that eye, that like gatekeeper of this reality? If you've had an experience like that on psychedelics, if you've taken, or I'd be really interested if you've taken a high dose of psychedelics, what was it like for you? Did you perhaps talk to people? I've never seen people on psychedelics. I've seen entities. And when I say entities, it's more like energies and shapes that are, you'd have to take psychedelics to know what I'm talking about. Again, I don't do not advocate taking psychedelics, especially for fun. Psychedelics are not for fun. Psychedelics are for spiritual awakening and growth, and to heal like mental illness and all that kind of good stuff. If you guys would like to hear me talk more about psychedelics, especially magic mushrooms, because that's the ones that I'm most interested in, though I do think DMT is quite fascinating as well, as a way to heal the spirit, the mind, and even the body. Comment below, please do, and maybe like and subscribe to Dysfunctional Enlightenment on in my Facebook page, Dysfunctional Enlightenment. I do a lot of stuff there. And we can talk about these things more at depth, but there's that eye. And just once I saw the eye, I see the eye in pop culture now, right? And it comes up again and again. And anybody who's taken a high dose of mushrooms will start talking to you about, about synchronicity, right? You know what I mean? That you never come back. There's always things like, why are there the eyes, like all that kind of, you just start seeing like the patterns of reality. Again, you have to have taken psychedelics. I hope you have. If you're watching this isn't probably a good primer for people who haven't, because it sounds crazy, because there's no way to, again, a woman can't tell a man what it feels like to be pregnant. There's just no comparable experience, because it's such a different thing, right? A person who doesn't have a child can never really know the same level of having one. And if you're someone who's adopted a child, I'm not saying that you can't love a child as much. There's just something about like making your own human being that's a completely unique experience, right? It's the same thing with psychedelics. It's a completely unique experience. And I'm going back to these 4 experiences that I really think are important for people. It's like you can't describe to a virgin what it's like to have sex. You can kind of give an idea of the process, but you get what I mean. And you can't describe to someone who's never fasted what it's like to truly be hungry and then eat. All of these experiences need to be experienced before you can really talk about it. You can theorize about it. Like you can theorize about lifting weights all day, but it's not going to make you buff. You have to get out and do it to really understand it, right? Or get the form down. And that's what it's like with psychedelics. So I'm sorry if that's not the best explanation, but if people have taken psychedelics, probably get what I'm saying. Maybe you haven't done 20, 25 grams before. But that's where reality gets funky. And I just think that I is there. It's like a gatekeeper on this plane. And I don't know what the hell that means. What I know is that I've taken enough psychedelics in my life not to really trust any perception or any system of belief, because we don't really know what we see. And if you think, well, it's just a hallucination, maybe it is, but maybe it's not. Human beings can't naturally see in the infrared, right? They're ultraviolet spectrums, but they exist. And with the right filter, you can see. The eighth dimension's there, right? We just really can't see it or interact with it. Maybe when our third eye is open, we can touch on that. And that's where I think psychedelics are. But I think that there is a gatekeeper in our own consciousness. Maybe it's our own filter of our own pineal gland. And that's just what we're seeing reflected back at us. But whatever it is, there's a gatekeeper. It's that eye. And when you see the eye, you'll notice that that eye seems to be kind of all around in society too, looking back at us. And the eye creeps me out too, because and I'm not a scientist, obviously. I got a witchcraft guy talking about tarot card reading and stuff like that. But physicists do this quantum experiment, and I can't think of the name. It's where they fire like protons or electrons through slits. And if you're looking at reality, it's real. But if you're not looking at reality, it exists as a wave of probability. And they've actually done this experiment right on the quantum level. Reality only really kind of solidifies as it's observed. It's really bizarre, right? And then when you think, and what's really bizarre is that the scientists tried to trick the test, and the test knew it was trying to be tricked, right? And that's really, really bizarre. And then if you add on top of it, like if you've taken a high dose of psychedelics and you've seen the eye, we call it the eye serum, right? Or whatever the hell it is. If you've seen the eye and it's looking right back at you, or if you've seen the field of eyes looking back at you, people know what I'm talking about. That's kind of creepy, isn't it? It is to me. And that's why I don't discount magic. I don't discount different dimensions. I don't discount different lines of belief. I don't necessarily believe the Earth's flat, but hell, we might live in some kind of weird plane or hourglass that we just don't perceive correctly, or any of those things, because we're all wrapped up in our own perceptions. I don't go for the atheistic beliefs because I've taken enough psychedelics that I could be hallucinating. But a lot of people seem to have similar hallucinations. And when you experience something so profoundly, and again, anybody who's taken a high dose of psychedelics will tell you you're in your right frame of mind. You're not crazy. You're just seeing some crazy stuff. You're seeing stuff you normally don't. So it's food for thought. And so I like what Joe Rogan said. I've taken enough psychedelics. I really don't know. I don't even know. I know that there's something out there, but I don't know the best word to put for it. You know, creator, spirit, force, entities. I identify very well with the Azir and the Watchers from Giving Up. But that's not necessarily right. That's just my own personal belief. And I also believe, like, so on one level of psychedelics, you might experience the Lord and the Lady in the different lights. But on another psychedelic experience, you might experience that I, right? Both of them are valid. That one's true and one's not. They can both be true. Just like I think we don't understand, like if anyone's taking a high dose of psychedelics, like we don't understand time correctly. Like I think entities, and once we expand our consciousness, like time's like a ball. It's not like an infinite backwards and forwards, so you can just kind of move around on it and do different things. And that's why we don't have to worry about like contemplating infinity and all that kind of stuff. We just don't really sense it right. And these are like really deep thoughts, right? But I'm just interested. Again, I find that one of the first real like steps to like I had always, and just I'll end this with this because I don't want this video to go on forever, and I'll maybe talk about this before, is like since I was a little kid, I like had a sense that I was like psychic or whatever, magic or whatever, not just different, right? I didn't really think of it that way. It wasn't until another tarot card reader psychic said, "You're really psychic, you just don't think you are." And that was after I had experimented with mushrooms, which seemed to really open that up even more, like unlock my third eye and something that had been asleep. And I had kindle a lot of old interest and stuff like that. But anyway, I'll do a video about that if anybody's interested about what brought me psychedelics and how it changed my life. Establish, like I said, again, synchronicity is a really cool thing. If you've done a bunch of psychedelics, you know what I'm talking about. And again, I don't want to give anybody the idea that, one, don't go doing psychedelics. It's illegal. Don't go to jail. Don't do that. Be a responsible adult. And two, psychedelics are not like pot or having a drink or something like that. This is a spiritual healing thing. These aren't to be like, people to eat mushrooms and go to party and stuff like that. That's the best way to do that. Do this like a couple times a year, maybe, or once a year on an equinox or something like that. Make it part of a religious experience. I don't like that. A spiritual experience. I suppose religious, whatever ritualized experience that you want to use. Religion's not a good word for a lot of people, but you get what I'm saying. Make it a spiritual thing, right? It's not fun. Me and Paul Stamos, his name, statement. So he's the mushroom guy. I can't think of his name offhand. Mushrooms are for spiritual growth, intellectual enlightenment, all that kind of stuff. Not to party with. I used to think they were, but then I took a bunch, and they're not. So I'm not advocating that at all. I advocate mushrooms to expand your magical spiritual knowledge and understand reality a little bit more. Also, if you're afraid of dying, like if you're struggling with a terminal illness, or if you find that you have crippling depression because you are terrified of dying, take a bunch of magic mushrooms and you will realize that we just kind of go on. Eternal spirits, and it will really help you with that mindset. Guys, that got a little dark at the end there. Magic mushrooms are an amazing thing, and I love to talk about them. If you would like me to talk more about them and tell you like more different trips and stuff like that, again, I'm going to ask you one more time because I think I did already because I smoked something before we started this. But I'll talk to you about why I like marijuana too, and the Indian tradition, all that kind of good stuff. Like, share, subscribe. Talk to me on my social media at Dysfunctional Enlightenment on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you'd like to. And get out there and be magic people. Go be fucking magical people, magic souls. The Kali Yuga is really just gray and concrete technology. It's bring some color and vibrancy back. Good night, guys. I'll talk to you later.